So, good morning. Hope you're all caffeined up. So I hope we've got an interesting panel for you today, and we're going to be looking at building communities, engaging communities, and getting the contributors involved in the editorial process, I hope. And our panellists are going to be giving you tips, techniques, and the platforms they use. So we are going to start off with Blair.
Yep.
Blair. So would you like to introduce yourself and give us your Twitter handle?
Yes. Can you all hear me, first of all? My name is Blair Hickman. I'm with ProPublica, and my Twitter handle is @AmandaBlair. So you can find me there. And I am just going to try and give you some general lessons that we've learned. I'm on the community team at ProPublica with Amanda Zamora, and we work closely with our reporters. A little bit about ProPublica. We're an investigative newsroom, which means that we produce these very long stories that reporters will spend sometimes a year or more working on. So it's my team's job to go out and find people throughout that whole process that can really contribute from day one up until when the stories launch. And so we're looking for these people and then trying to figure out how we can generate action from them. And those actions can be sharing stories, tips, whatever. The thing about ProPublica is we focus on very niche topics, some examples of which are down there, like drywall, which, as you can imagine, isn't a very big community. But what we've actually found is that these smaller communities are much easier to work with. I kind of feel like that's because the smaller you get, it's a higher likelihood that somebody is particularly passionate about a subject. So that's sort of lesson one, is when you are reporting on some sort of long story, figure out who you're looking for and then how they can help your reporting. Once you find them, you want to be able to give them a task. So our lesson is, we've found that these small communities work really well, and then if you can get even smaller than that, that's even better. I'm particularly involved in an investigation into patient safety that we have going on right now. It's been going on for about a year, and we've yet to launch a traditional story, but the community work started back in May. And even within that community, patient harm, which is pretty niche, there are 4 to 5, I call them sub-communities, that all behave different way. Patients who were recently harmed, patients who were harmed 10 years ago, providers who are also patient safety advocates, and they all have different nuances and different places that they live on the internet. So these are all things that you need to keep in mind when you're going out and looking for these niche communities, which sounds great, but then the next question is, how do you find them? When we embark on a new project, our first step is research. We want to know what communities already exist online. And the biggest thing out here is ask your network, because that is the very first thing that you should do, is ask your network. If you're looking for niche communities, chances are the sources that you've already established, whether that's using social media or traditional sourcing methods, might know if they live on some obscure forum that was built in 1990 with GeoCities, but is still where everybody goes to talk about installment loans or something like that. So that would always be the first step. And then on the left is just a list of some of our favorite tools. They're pretty well known, I would say, except for the top two. Bottlenose connects to your various social networks and tracks what people are talking about in real time, but it gives it to you in this great little sonar map. So it's very easy to find new hashtags and new influencers who are very often themselves talking about communities that they participate in. The same with Sulia. It's more of a social news aggregator, but they have a leaderboard that ranks people based on their influence in different topics. The rest, as I said, you've probably heard of. LinkedIn is particularly good for finding industry professionals. There are several groups on there that are quite helpful. But then once you find these communities, the important lesson here is you actually need to join them and participate in them. They can be quite powerful. These people already have an interest in this topic and are talking amongst themselves. The likelihood of them contributing to your reporting is high, but they need to trust you. So I like to think of it as when you're walking into a party where you might know 1 to 2 people, right? You go in and you kind of survey the scene, and then you make small talk with a couple people, and they introduce you to more people, and you gain their trust slowly but surely. And then down the road, they might give you a little more information. So the goal here when you find these communities is to get them to recognize your face. So when they have something to share, or when you have a question, they're more likely to relate to you and give you what you are looking for. With the patient safety investigation that I mentioned, we found a particularly good community on LinkedIn. It was 14,000 providers that were all focused on patient safety and quality improvement. So that was fantastic. But it was a little more difficult to find one with patients that had been harmed and their families. There were several, but none were particularly active. So we said, we're going to build one. And we chose Facebook for this. There are some pros and cons to Facebook, but I think the biggest pro is most people are there. And you can also make an open group. Our goals when we started this community was, one, we knew that in the US, about an estimate say more than 1 million people are harmed every year in a hospital. So we knew this was a big community. But we also knew they were quite isolated and didn't have a place to talk. So we said, you know what, we want to make a space for patients, their families, providers, and other journalists to come together, share resources, share their stories, connect with us. But we also, that last bit was important. We wanted to make an open space that other journalists could come in and look for stories, because we knew that it was literally impossible with our bandwidth for us to tell all of the stories we wanted to tell. So that's why we started the group. It's this started in May of last year, and now we have 1,600 members. The way that process kind of worked was, I think there are a few reasons it was a success. One is at the beginning, we did a lot of grassroots marketing. So if you're thinking about building a community of your own, you need to consider the time that that's going to take. We were literally emailing our existing contacts and saying, we built this thing, I think your newsletter might be interested in it. If you think so too, let them know. So we pulled in a lot of people that way. But then when people get there, you want to make sure that it's active, that there's new content, just like you want new stories on A1 so that it's fresh. So we literally had an editorial schedule for this Facebook group, and we wrote posts specifically for them. We had scheduled discussion questions, and we stuck to it, just like you would with any site. And when we were thinking about how to create these pieces, and what I would say to you if you also go down this path is say, what can we make for this community that's valuable? That's always what we ask at ProPublica when we put something on the site or write something for this community, is like, what did they want to read? So sometimes our posts were very, 10 things to do if you've been harmed. Or we had a lot of people at the beginning saying, the media never covers my story, I don't understand why, this is so frustrating. So we went to one of the patient safety advocates in our group already and said, hey, could you write a primer on what journalists need to be able to report on your story? And she did one half, and our reporter, there are 2 reporters on this project, Marshall Allen and Olga Pierce, he wrote the other half. And he said, you know what, we've heard you. Here's a list, I need records, I need documentation, you should complain if this happens to you, because reporters need those things to be able to verify that your story actually happened. So we did all of this feeding, and we were building up the group, and then we also are very active moderators. I think a lot of times people make a community and they say go, and they just sort of expect it to happen, or they might not check in. At the beginning, we were checking in several times a day. We still check in at least 3 times a day. We know that we want a very constructive tone. We've been told that groups dedicated to this issue in the past didn't work because people got very angry.
2 minutes, Blair.
2 minutes? Oh my goodness. Anyway, we delete a lot of comments, and if people repeatedly violate our guidelines, we kick them out. You have the ability to do that on Facebook, so that's a good thing. So you found all these people, and you're interacting with all of these communities, but what do you do with them? You need to organize your sources. Our favorite tool for this is Google Forms. This is part of the Google Docs suite. And we use that to make what we call callouts. A callout is just a questionnaire that asks for very specific data points from your sources that you think you might need down the road when you're reporting a story. So what you could do is you go into Google Docs and you ask all your questions. You get an embed code that you can put on any website anywhere, and that's what you see on the left. And then what happens after people fill out this information is it goes into a Google spreadsheet that only you can see and people that you have given permission to can see. So this info is private, it's important. And then it goes into this spreadsheet that you can sort and structure according to who you are looking for. So with the patient safety investigation, via our Facebook group, we've gotten almost 300 responses to our questionnaire, and it's literally changed the course of some of the stories that they were planning on writing. And then the gold star would be, you know, in 2 months when they sit down to write their stories and they need X patient that went to this hospital in Nebraska and had this infection, that person would be in this document. My boss wrote a great primer, which you can find. It has cut off, but you can find it at bit.ly/reporting with Google Forms if you want to know more about how we use these and the technicalities of it. And then the last thing that you do is once you've gathered all these people and you've organized them, you want to give them something to do, some way to get involved with your editorial process. There are two tricks that we have several things, but two of the biggest things that we do to get people really involved in our work is we put a big focus on the design. My team now has its own section on the site. It's called Get Involved, and it's literally every single way that people can get involved in our editorial processes. They all live on these little action cards, which look very different from the way the stories are presented on our site, and we did that on purpose because phase 2 of this, we're going to get embed code for all these action cards, and they're going to go all over ProPublica. And what happens is as people see it over and over again, it becomes a visual cue. There's something I can do here. Same thing with the green buttons. Those are sprinkled all over the site right now, like in this Guns app that we have. So we want people to start to associate green, there's something I can do here. Same with every single button has an action verb in it. You want to be very blunt and you want to be very obvious and you want to be very action oriented when you're asking people to do these things. And then the last little psychological trick is all of our cards and the Get Involved page include metrics. This is something that you see on a lot of nonprofit sites, and I would actually encourage you to go study how NGOs and nonprofits get people to actually contribute things. Because when you see, 288 people have shared their story, it makes you want to do it as well. You want to join the group. So it's just a little trick that we use. I think I'm out of time. That was so fast.
You are out of time, I'm afraid.
Sorry.
But we've got quite a long time for Q&A.
I have a summary, yeah.
So I'm sure we can get back to it then.
Cool.
So Joe's up next.
I'm going to take a breath now and not breathe for the next 8 minutes. So try and fit it all in.
Do you want a cue when you're coming to the end?
I'll keep an eye on that clock.
Okay. All right.
Shout at me if I am nearing 10 minutes. Right, yeah, that's brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'm Jo Kelly. I'm the community editor for Trinity Mirror. I work with our regional titles. Before that, I was social media and community editor for the Liverpool Echo and Daily Post. Prior to that, I was a multimedia journalist. You've got some fantastic national and international people here today from companies, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about our regional press and examples from those papers that hopefully are local to some of you. So, at Trinity Mirror, we are reinventing our newsroom at the moment. We're calling it Newsroom 3.0. Don't ask me what 2.0 or 1.0 was. I don't know. And a large part of that is sort of rethinking how we re-engage with communities and formalising how we process and publish content that they create. And a big part of this is creating communities teams in each of our centres. And a communities team consists of a communities editor who is a senior member of the newsroom, and their responsibilities are to identify people in the community that would be good to have as contributors, and they initiate those relationships, and they recruit trusted contributors to supply regular platforms, whether that's a blog post, a weekly column for our print product, a photo, whatever it is. They manage social media platforms to build conversations around communities projects, and we actually have social media editor for the regionals here, Heather, so if you've got any social media questions, over there, not me. Also on the communities teams, we have community content curators, which isn't easy to say, and they become the point of contact for recruited contributors once the communities editor has made that relationship. They process all content direct, and by content direct I basically mean user-generated content. They collate content direct packages for print and online and do all that for us. Okay, so what do I mean by content direct? I've tried to split it into 5 sort of broad areas. First of all, pictures and captions, and they are examples of that would be our Little Horror supplement, where parents send in pictures of their children dressed up, and they are sometimes horrific. One pregnant lady sent in her tummy as a pumpkin, and we make supplements of those online galleries. Another example would be our Santa Paws, which is at Christmas. There's supplements in our papers and online galleries that our readers send in their festive pets. Massively popular, really, really popular stuff. And that's just someone sending in a picture and a caption. Secondly, regular platforms, they're things like columns. These are from trusted contributors that we know are going to send us X number of words and a picture by a certain deadline. We've got a really good relationship with them. We know where it's being published, whether it's page 5 of the paper or the hyperlocal section on the website. We've got, it's a great relationship that we've established and maintained. Then it's general stories, pics, videos, tables, stuff that we're not necessarily expecting. And it could be from someone who hasn't got in touch with us before, but it's still great content, and I'll show you one example of this. This is someone who hadn't interacted with us before. We just tweeted the Newcastle Chronicle this video. So that's something, yeah, he's not a trusted contributor. He's someone that knows that we publish community content. He's got in touch, said he's seen this video I've made. Newcastle Chronicle took a still of that video, put it on the front page, embed the video on their site. Hundreds of thousands of hits that video had. So it can be, you know, absolutely anything. Online forms, more and more we're using online forms. We work with a third party called Jotform. And these are great if you want to be able to tailor the information that you're asking for. So people just send you an email, they can send you absolutely any info. They can leave things out that are quite critical when you're publishing. So if you use an online form, you can ask them, say, you know, you need to attach a picture, you need to send us this information. And it's also really helpful for formatting when we come to publishing. So here's one example. I use Macs, and I'm not used to this. Newcastle United Fan of the Week. There's Darren Perkins has sent in his, he's filled in a form online. They do this every week. And at the bottom you can see the form if you want to fill in. Really, really easy to do. We get great response to forms. Finally, social media, whether that's the CCC's collating a panel of response to a particular article for online and in print, or whether it's the daily letters page, which has tweets and tuned Twitter trends they do in Newcastle, which is really popular. Okay, so one example in particular that I'll use. North Wales, this started off in, and it's gone to other centres. It's gone to South Wales Echo, our Merseyside Centre, I think Coventry and Teesside are launching it. And they found they were getting lots of articles and communication from the art community, but there wasn't really anywhere to put it. There wasn't a home, there wasn't a page in the paper or an online page. So what they created was it was a virtual art gallery. Basically, it was an online form. Amateur artists went on, filled in the form, information about themselves, how they got into art, what their art means to them, attach a headshot and 5 to 10 pictures of their work. And as you can see, it's really, really great. It's just amateur artists, and I'll show you one of the articles. And some really good stories come out of it, how these people got into art, and then some of the work is fantastic, and then there's a gallery at the bottom for you to go through his work. Ooh. And then we cross-publish that into print. As you can see, that's a South Wales Echo picture, some from Merseyside, one from the Daily Post in North Wales. It's really, really nice content across both platforms. Okay, there's a couple of other examples that I'll just run through. Santa Paws, which I've already mentioned, festive pets, hugely popular. Second along, Tom C and Stars. This is a celebrities page that the Coventry Telegraph have just launched, and it's readers sending in the pictures of them, snap with the celebrity. It seems like pretty simple stuff, but often this is the most popular content on the site, along with the gallery that they do, which is pictures of people on their night out. A lot of weeks, those two Content Direct projects are the most popular things that people are clicking on. Got to Dance. This is an example of where we hand over a page to a certain community. In this case, it's the local dance schools. We get in touch with them. We create a contacts database of, as many as we can find. Get in touch with them, whether it's phoning them, going out to them, sending them emails, saying, this page is now here for you. Send us your pictures and your stories. So that's a dance one we do. Snow was hugely popular for us, but that's like an example of an ad hoc one. Something's happened, we react to it. We get loads of content back in relation to it. On the bottom, that's a nostalgia page in Liverpool. Top half is a local historian who writes us a column every week. He's a trusted contributor. And the bottom is a fantastic guy. He's a postcard collector, and his spare room is just a room of albums of postcards. And every week, picks a couple out, writes something, and sends them in to us. Absolutely great stuff. And they both have social media and their own networks, and they do a lot of promotion of the platforms, which is great. Next along, Ask the Expert. I like this. This is running in the Daily Post in North Wales. And every week they get an expert in, whether it's a flooding expert, a nutrition expert, a technology expert. And they run an hour-long live blog answering readers' questions. And the next day they pick the best of the blog and cross-publish it into print, which I think is fantastic. And finally, I think this is a great example of a way we can use Content Direct to cover more controversial, harder news. This was Daily Post in North Wales, again, and there was a neonatal unit that faced closure, and they put an online form on the site. It was for parents to fill in their experience of having their miracle baby in the unit and what it would mean to them if it closed. And they got a front page and 5 inside pages out of it of really, really good content. I think it's an example of how it can work really well for harder news. I can show you the gallery, which I think is really emotive. It's the picture of the baby. If you show the caption, it's a sort of summary of what happened to that baby at the unit. So really, really emotive stuff. Okay, how am I doing? Yay! I'm going to finish early now, aren't I? Okay, how do we get the Content Direct? 3 main ways. Email, and one example that I've used there is the Birmingham Mail, and they asked for real-life love stories to be emailed into them. Email, it gives contributors a bit of a chance to be creative. There's no restrictions to what they can send in. It's an empty page. So really, really nice stories that were sent in, and the winner won a romantic meal for 2, I think. Online forms, that's the front page from the Miracle Babies, which I think you agree, it's really, really emotive stuff. All of those pictures were sent in, and that was through an online form. And finally, we get it through social media, obviously, nothing new there. That's the Newcastle Letters page, tweets of the day down the side, and 2 Twitter trends down the other side. In the future, there will be other ways that we get Content Direct in, but they're the ways we're using at the moment. Okay. And finally, what I feel we've learned as community teams at Trinity Mirror, and don't just throw a net and hope that it'll all be okay. Don't just put a tweet out there and say, send us your pics and just see what you get back. Try to be cleverer than that. Think about what it is you want to achieve by this Content Direct project. What is the content that I want to come in? And then think backwards from there. Think, okay, is it an art project? Then I need to think who I'm approaching for this content and do it actively rather than passively, not just waiting for it to come. Think, right, if it's an art project, probably art schools, local galleries, contacts database, get in touch with everybody and do it in an active way. Talk to the right people to get this content. And then think about what is the best process to get it in. Is it social media to create a buzz around the project? Is it just a simple picture that they can just send nice and easily through social media? Is it an online form because you need to dictate what information that they're sending in? Is it an email so they can be creative? Is it a photography project? So maybe a Flickr thread is the best way to do it. So always be thinking about the process of how to get the content in as well. Be clear with contributors about your expectations and intentions. Content Direct projects, user-generated content, it's a collaboration. You've really got to be as clear with contributors as possible. And we need to stay involved and be part of the project. It's no use kicking it off, talking about it, walking away, and then coming back with it when you're ready to collate and publish that content. You need to be involved the whole way along, talking to contributors, being involved in the project. And keep them informed of when and where you're going to publish their content, always respond, always get in touch, whether it's by email or phone or however you want to. Email a weekly newsletter, just always have that channel of communication open with them. And finally, value your contributors. I was interviewing for CCC's Community Content Curators in Newcastle this week, because we're adding a few more to the team. And I asked one candidate, how would you maintain relationships with community contributors? And I was expecting, oh, do social media and databases? And she just said, well, I'd be nice. And to me, it took me back, but I think it was probably the best answer she could have given. And it's probably the most simple thing someone will say today, and I would be saying it, but be nice. We need to create really nice, interesting communities that contributors will want to return to, keep engaging with, and keep contributing to, whether that's with content or participation. There we go. Did I make it?
Yeah, yes, you did. You're
Did
fine.
I have time to go?
You're fine, you're fine. It's when people start to snore that I'll actually come over and pull you off.
Oh, okay. No one was snoring like that.
So we've got Sarah up next, who's from CNN iReport, and I think she's going to talk to us about how you keep those communities engaged and keep them coming back and contributing.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. You can say it back if you want. Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Brown. I'm an iReport producer here in London. On Twitter, I am Sarah Brown GB. I have been misidentified with Sarah Brown, Gordon Brown's wife, a few times, but I get her followers, so it's great. Okay, so before we kind of go into a few things about how to kind of grow, engage, and impress on your communities, I just wanted to say a few little things about CNN iReport's platform itself. I'm the international representative for iReport and space, apparently. So if we ever get anything from Mars, I'm in there. There's also a team in Atlanta, and I was hired last year to basically improve on the massive amount of fantastic content that they were receiving from the rest of the world. We started as a platform, and we are a participatory journalism platform or user-generated content platform. This is where our readers and our audience come to share their stories. We have existed in one shape or another since 2006. The site alone launched 2008, and we had a refresh in 2011 where we tried to make the site a little bit more interactive in terms of people who register and have accounts can follow each other so they can see updates from people they're interested in, etc. We currently have more than 1 million registered iReporters, of which we have received an iReport from every single country in the world. In 2011, we finally got Nauru, and we have received something from South Sudan, so we're doing pretty well. And all the content we receive goes through the same standards and vetting procedures that it would do for the rest of CNN, so there's no difference there in editorial standards. So, the whole goal of what we do, what I do, is to harness all that fantastic content that comes in that we reach out to, and to inform and enrich CNN's news content. They contribute on every single type of story in every shape or form we can imagine, whether it's breaking news, whether it's features, video or images, increasingly opinion, and others. We're also increasingly looking at other platforms in terms of pushing out our content, but also pulling in our content, and that's only going to be improving and increasing, I think, as the years go on. So, what do you want to do to grow your community, and how do you want to manage your great content? I'm just going to go through about 5 or 6 points about how to do this. The first thing is empower the audience to tell you what to cover. I noticed last year that we were receiving scores of emails and iReports from Nigeria asking us to cover a horrific story of 4 young men in Port Harcourt who were murdered by a mob because they were misidentified as thieves. After it got to almost 100 iReports, I thought, hang on a minute, there's something going on here. This is the story people want us to tell. So what we did was we sent our correspondent, Vladuthier, down to Port Harcourt, and he investigated the story and produced, as a result of it, not only a piece, but also a TV story. And this was literally our audience saying to us, you are not covering this. We want to see it, and we've come to you. So there was an expectation there, and I think it's the least we can do to kind of at least investigate the story and see how we can tell it in a new and interesting way. And it turned into a very powerful piece. And secondly, the one on the right, Bangladesh has been riven in recent weeks and months by protests following the war crimes tribunals, you may well have seen. And again, scores of Bangladeshi iReporters were sending in really fantastic eyewitness reports, videos, testimonies, images, etc. And we reached out to a lot of them, got their stories and put together a very strong piece based, again, on their content, which did very well. And was also shared a lot within the Bangladeshi community, which is very interesting. We had a lot of feedback on Twitter, a lot of feedback on Facebook, people commenting on the iReports themselves as well. So it created an extra buzz and an extra kind of level of storytelling that we were not expecting, but were very pleased by. So, listen to your audience and empower them to tell the stories they want to tell. Secondly, this may sound blindingly obvious, but it's very important to me, which is getting the right platform for the right story. If you are trying to use an email format or a written word format for a story that's visual, you're not going to get what you want. Same, if you're asking for pictures from some obscure part of the world where there is no broadband access, people will not have the phones or the quality of HD video that we need, you're wasting your time. However, if you get the right platform, you're going to be able to tell a story in a really, really beautiful way. Obama's inauguration earlier this year, we decided to tell it through Instagram. Everyone knows what a selfie is, right? Hands up here who's done a selfie at some point. Go on. Come on. 2, I think more. All right, you're being shy. We knew that loads of people were going to go to the inauguration. They were going to want to show their friends they were there. They were going to be part of history. So they were going to take selfies. And, you know, who are we to deny seeing these pictures? They're going to be great. So we put together a small platform, and we, pulled in pictures from Instagram that have been hashtagged CNN iReport. Pulled them in. We took a look at them and verified as much as possible the person was there and not standing in front of a cardboard cutout of the White House. And then pulled them into this inauguration interactive, which I can't scroll down, unfortunately, so it's a graph. But if you go to the website and take a look at this, it's Instagrams, but also iReports from people from all over the country, but also all over the world, showing themselves at the inauguration. And that's a classic case of using the right platform to tell the story in a good way. Think multi-platform. Often I think when content comes in, news organisations don't always really think about, well, hang on a minute, there's going to be more ways than one way to skin a cat. There's going to be more ways to tell the story. If you're getting a story that comes in as posted on your website, it shouldn't stop there. You know, is this guy a good interviewer? Is he articulate that you've just spoken to for this piece? Well, TV's going to want to know about him. You know, maybe you want to do a follow-up with him. This is a gentleman, and I wonder if I can show this. Okay, just imagine it's playing. But basically, this delightful gentleman is a Filipino priest who I got into contact with in Jerusalem when he was studying there. And he was there for the when the Pope resigned, and when the new Pope was officially announced. And I spoke with him. He sent in some beautiful pictures of the crowds, and I spoke with him, and I thought, you know what, this guy's great. You know, we've got a whole team out there with Connect the World, which is one of our evening flagship shows with Becky Anderson. Let's get him on air. And I said, Joe, is there any chance you can wander down to where they're filming on set and do an interview? And he was like, of course. And went down there, sat with Becky Anderson, did the most fantastic interview about how him as a Catholic priest, what this is going to mean to him in the future. And as a result of that, we got a beautiful piece of content. And it didn't even stop on air. We then clipped that and added it to the news story. So we ended up with a cyclical kind of phase of content that, from one person came a multitude of wonderful stuff. And I think it's really important to think about how any content that you come in from your community should be placed in as many different places as possible. Close the loop. This is very, very dear to my heart, and also to Lila King, who is Director of Social at CNN, and also worth following on Twitter. I believe she's Lila Cina, C-I-N-A. She feels, and I feel, it's always very important, as Jo pointed out in her presentation, acknowledge and thank the people who are contributing to you. They have gone out of their way to use your platform. They have used their altruism to send you quality content. The least you can do is give thanks and gratitude and close that loop. Tell them you're grateful for what they sent you. We always acknowledge and thank our iReporters, and we make a note of the things that they've been used in, and we send them a link if possible. We try and clip it up for them if they can see it. We thank them on Twitter. And this is always very gratefully received. We get retweeted, we get thanked ourselves. But you've also got an iReporter now who thinks, my quality is valued, I'm going to want to contribute again. I also think about the rate of return. Happy iReporters are repeat iReporters. So if you've got somebody who's been treated well and who felt the content was valued, they're going to come back to you. I also think it's important when you're doing that to foster a sense of community and interaction with the people you're talking to. Jo said, be nice, and I think that's something that the most sophisticated tools in the world can't do, but it's so important. If you treat somebody kindly and say, we really valued your contribution, we really liked it, that's going to be great. One of the important things when we put together iReport pages is looking at the interaction amongst users. If we have an iReport that's getting some really, really good comments underneath, well, is there something that we can shape from that? What are they saying, and how can we use that to drive what we want the story, what they want the story to be about? And finally, of course, we always credit iReporters for their work, and we retain non-exclusive rights for their content, and they retain their rights. And just to give you a lovely little story behind that picture, this is the lovely Martina from Italy, who does wonderful contributions for us on the Italian elections, she talked about the austerity, about the crisis in the economy in Europe, the Eurozone. Always does wonderful videos, very thoughtful pictures, a very creative woman. And she, for her first birthday on iReport, she got a friend to bake a cake and sent us the image of the results. So there's somebody that started off just sending us a one-off iReport talking about Italy and has become a really valued member of the community. So managing the content, this is what I call the ripple effect. If you have developed and published a story from your user-generated content community, it does not stop when you publish it. You know, you are going to be getting comments on that story. You're going to get retweets and responses from social on that story. You're going to be getting reactions, positive, negative. You're going to be getting potential new angles. People are going to be posting in comments saying, hey, this happened to me as well. I was once, you know, for example, the Boston, what's happening in Boston right now. You know, I'm in Boston at the moment, it's happening to me as well. My neighborhood is shut down. Well, that's somebody I'm going to want to talk to. You know, always be looking at your stories and keeping an eye on what's bubbling up from them after they've been published. It does not end when you hit publish. Promoting your stories cross-platform, I know it's obvious, but it's still really, really important to think about. If you're going to reach out to people, to as many different platforms as possible to get your story out there and to solicit more response and content in return, think of the different platforms it's got to go on. You have the big guns, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but you have smaller ones. You know, think about using those as well. Is there something that can generate an interesting conversation? How about Branch? How about Quora? Just think a little bit differently. And finally, when you're publishing content, creating those ripples, have a social plan in place. If you want a community to respond to the content you're publishing, make sure from the get-go that that's very clearly marketed into your story plan. The moment you think or shape a story, think about how you can promote it to keep that story going, give it an afterlife, get that ripple effect going. How am I doing for time? No worries. My final thought, to paraphrase a once well-known TV presenter. If you build it, they will come. We use what's called an assignment model, whereas we literally build an assignment to draw in content, and the link is then used throughout our website, it's cross-promoted on TV, etc. Often it will be us that kickstarts a conversation. You know, we do have to do a nudge, as Cass Sunstein would say, but the community often responds in kind. And like I said, they can often take a story down angles that we might necessarily have thought of. The General Petraeus story was a very interesting one, you know, when he was apparently allegedly unfaithful to his wife, and there's all a big scandal. We responded by putting up a poll on Facebook saying what constitutes infidelity, and the results were absolutely fascinating. I would have loved to have seen the gender split in the comments, let's put it that way. As I said before, empowering your community. The assignment model empowers our reporters to follow each other, so they can follow each other on our site, they can comment on each other's stories. We have iReporters, featured iReporters of the week, you know, praising their content and making sure they're from as disparate parts of the world as possible. We have a traffic light system on all iReport content, so when you have an iReport that you look at, it has red, amber, green, which has our community can say to us, this is no good, this could be good, but maybe it needs some more work, or green, this is great, we would like to see this. And we always look at our stats, what's being shared, what's not being shared, what's being commented on, what's being looked at. And finally, as I said, using social sites to complement your platform and make it easy to generate content and find you, such as the hashtag issue with the inauguration Instagram special that I talked about. By using those hashtags on Instagram, we made it a lot easier for us to pull in content and create something really beautiful. And finally, that is the 4 million ways that you can find us. And, you know, love to hear from you, so please do feel free to find me on Twitter. That is me, not Sarah Brown, Gordon Brown's wife, and also my email. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. So, next, we have Niko. And I'm not even going to attempt his surname. He did try and coach me, but I'm just terrible. And you will know why when he tells you his full name.
Yeah, it's Ruokosuo. It's easy. Yeah. But I'm going to go right into the topic in the interest of time. But hopefully, the previous speakers have sort of increased your appetite for eyewitness news. And I'm going to tell you how you can have access to 250,000 contributors as of tomorrow in a very controlled and low-cost environment if you wish to do so. Scoopshot is a company in Finland. We have a mobile application and a web store for contributing content, video, and images to media. But it also applies to brands. So it's engaging, authentic, and relevant content at low cost. We really think the new press photographer is the crowd. It doesn't replace the professional, staff photographer, but it is a very powerful addition to that. And why is that? Well, they are everywhere, whether it's Easter celebration in the Philippines or a local disaster or accident that gets into very, very hyperlocal levels with a crowd that big. They always have a camera. And it would really be foolish not to take advantage, not to use that as a resource in any media, brand, or content creation process that you are up to. Why you need them? Well, the demand, and this time I'm using really the word unique content, is increasing every day. In the digital environment, sharing information that is widely available is not the way to attract attention. You really need to find the unique stories among the masses out there. So what exactly is Scoopshot? Yes, it's a free mobile application that anybody can download to capture newsworthy photos and video. And at the back end, it's an online store designed for media professionals or any content creator to acquire eyewitness content. And it's patent-pending technology. There's a lot of very important aspects of user-generated content built into the process. One of them is image rights. We haven't talked very much about image rights today yet, but it is very essential to cover those aspects. And in this environment, both the sender and the recipient have accepted the terms of use. The other is authenticity. It is very, very risky not to have some gauges on the authenticity of the content that you receive from masses of people. And with our sort of sandbox environment, the authenticity is pretty much guaranteed. And then the third aspect that I do want to mention is rewarding the people. We talked about thanking it and all of that. But in our environment, it is also possible and very often the practice to pay for the content. And that's automatically done via the system. The payments aren't huge, but they are very important to the users. So the mobile photographer shoots a photo or video, sets a price, and sends it via the Scoopshot application. Journalists have access to all of that content coming from those 250,000 currently contributors to that store, whether it's photos or video, and they can search and find the content that is relevant to them. And then simply acquire it, buy it at the click of a mouse. The really neat part of this is, though, that not only are you subject to people pushing you content that they think is newsworthy, you can actually send assignments to anybody in our network anywhere in the world. You could choose a location from our heat map, whether it's Amsterdam, London, or Boston. The system will tell you, it's telling here that this is Amsterdam. There are 3,000 to 4,000 scoop shooters, the mobile users as we call them, within that circle. You send them an assignment, each of them gets a push notification telling them that the Trinity Mirror or whoever is asking for photos about this. And they respond to that. I can show you some examples from that. And that happens in minutes. The fastest cycle we've had was about an incident where the traffic lights went out in Helsinki, and they couldn't send reporters out there because the traffic was jammed. In 6 minutes after sending the task, they had photos from the rush hour published on the website from people witnessing that on the spot. This is the image authenticity indicator in our system. When you open the photo details, you can see where the photo is coming from, who sent it, and the 5 criteria we use for the authenticity is knowing the sender. We know the name and phone number of the sender, so you can contact them immediately if you so wish. The second one, and I don't know if you can read that, photo was taken with Scoopshot app. That means it has never been removed from the workflow. It cannot be edited. It's transferred pixel by pixel from the camera to the store, and it's nowhere else because it's removed from the camera. So if you buy exclusive rights to that, you have exclusive rights to that. Location, EXIF data, and resolution are other factors that we look. But if it shows 5 green checks, that's pretty much guaranteed as authentic content. When you do a task, you can direct all of the content to a market page. What does that mean? You can either just put it there for viewing, but you could actually also put a price against those photos. So let's say you do a story about a football tournament, and you put a price tag $5 per photo. All of those photos that are sent to that task, you buy 5 of them, publish them on your print and website, but all of that content goes to the marketplace where I see my godson playing football and I want to buy that photo. That's, $5, PayPal, it's my photo now. So you can actually make a virtual photo agency by creating exciting tasks, make some money with that, and have all of this, become a profit center, if you so wish. But it's really about, concept to content in less than 10 minutes. This is Metro Netherlands before the presidential election. They just wanted to poll the world. They sent a task to the entire world, who's going to win. And they bought 9 photos from around the world, South America, North America, Europe, Scandinavia, and they received 900 photos for that task. They bought 9 of them, 10 euros a piece, that's 90 euros, a front page, story about the upcoming election. Unique, relevant, and low-cost content in 10 minutes. If you're a brand, you can also use this engine to acquire content and do marketing. Here's an electronics stand manufacturer, Vogels, that did a task, how do you use iPad at home? And they received hundreds of photos about people, this guy shaving, using the face video and shaving, actually, using the iPad. Music stands, the one on the lower left is wrapped in how do you call that thing in English? The plastic wrap.
Cling film.
Yeah, to keep the moisture out. So they actually did 3 things. They did marketing, they did market research, but they also got a lot of ideas on how to, to whom and how to market the product in the future. So very, very powerful tool for that case as well. Let's look at Germany. Sorry, I don't have much stuff from the UK, but Germany just went wild about 2 weeks ago. March 26th, Scoopshot was covered on a German TV channel called Pro7. And these are the hours before and after the TV reporting. And it goes from 0 to 85 hours, and about 20th hour is when the TV program aired. And at the 60th hour after that, we had 52,000 mobile photographers in Germany contributing and eager to get assignments. At the same time, a German media company called Watts, it's a 2 billion euro media company, very strong regionally, announces they start using Scoopshot to their readers. And I really liked what the chief editor, online chief editor said. It's in German there, but for the pleasure of all of you, I've translated it to English. We are delighted about our readers sharing with us a moment of their lives with their photos. I think that's a pretty good way to put it. He really gets it. So, what do they do as their first task? Coffee cups. And we're like, okay, that's pretty relevant news, but let's see what happens. The task was, we're looking for the prettiest coffee cup in Germany. By April 22nd, when the task ended, they had received 27,758 photos of coffee cups. Now, I call that engaging a large crowd because people loved it. And it all goes to the market page where everybody can see, and that's coffee cups, lots of them. I mean, it's actually pretty encouraging or somehow exciting to browse. And I don't know if you're laughing at this cup here, and if you got good eyesight, the same or similar cup is on the left there. And I actually went ahead and check it's from 2 different senders. So I guess the Germans are pretty happy with themselves.
And believing their own publicity.
Sorry?
And believing their own publicity.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, same paper now going from this, let's engage the crowd, to a bit more editorial task.
You're over time, actually. So.
Okay, I'll speed it up. The most annoying potholes in their region, local city, Dortmund. Within 12 hours, they received 562 pothole photos. And while announcing the task, Watts, the newspaper, says, we promise to use this content with local authorities. Now, how cool is that? Because now you're sending stuff and you're really getting the sense, I'm making a contribution here. So they get potholes, and people, again, get pretty creative with them. It is really cool to see how people respond. And this information is valuable when you go to the photo details, you get the nastiest potholes, and you know exactly from which street corner that photo is. Football excites everybody, right? So, of course, Watts, Dortmund is playing Malaga in the Euro finals, asking, what's going to be the outcome of tomorrow's game? And people, again, get amazingly creative. This girl, with the makeup in her eyes, and just amazing stuff about how they predict whether it's 3-1 or 1-0, the end result. Very cool stuff. 1,984 photos for that task. So now they call the chief editor, Oliver Multhaup, who brought Scoopshot to Watts, Captain Kirk. So if anybody wants to be called similar thing or viewed in similar light, talk to me. We have a booth out there, and I can get you set up and literally give you access to 250,000 contributors in an image control, rights control, authentic, and rewarded, manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, questions?
Hi, I've got a question for Sarah.
There you are. Hello.
Hi. You said that, I just wanted to know about the verification process of some of the images that you use. Do you use 2 sources, the person that's sending it in and somebody else?
No, well, it depends on the story, quite frankly. What we have is we kind of have a 2-layer system where the first layer is we have pre-moderation, where stuff that comes into the system is looked at by a bunch of pre-mods who check for, obviously, obscenities, any problematic stuff that we should be looking at. They also escalate anything that might be breaking news to us, so we can grab that first. And secondly, the vetting process goes within the team itself, and that is a process of reaching out to the person who has posted the content and asking them a series of very detailed questions depending on what the story is. Looking at the metadata of photos obviously is very important. Looking at the location, where they posted it. If they post something, they say it's in Boston, but their location is saying California, well, we need to think about that. We can also look through third-party sources. Do they have a Twitter account? Are they on Facebook? Is that Twitter account a brand new one, or is it something they've been posting out for a long time? So we try and do it holistically as possible to kind of get an understanding of when that picture was taken, what that person's experiences were. And it's not until we're satisfied with those that we actually will verify it. And if you look on the iReport site, you'll see that content, if it's verified and approved, has a little red bug in the corner, and that means that somebody from the team has looked at it and approved it, and it's verified as far as we could ever do by our team. No worries.
2 brief questions. Number 1, for the iReport, you were saying that you're pulling pictures off Instagram. How does that go with copyright? Are you just assuming that people are letting you publish them, or
No,
you get in touch with them?
Yeah, the hashtag, we say to people, are you okay with putting the CNN iReport hashtag on the image? What we would do is we actually upload a picture to our Instagram account saying, we want you to contribute to CNN's inauguration coverage. If you would like your photo to be part of it, hashtag it Instagram. So that person has already, by that response that we say you've agreed by hashtagging it, and we make sure that they're okay with that, and then that's how we pull it from them.
And the second question is community management. I mean, you find all these amazing stories and people out there. How do you feel the status, to be blunt, is for your department compared to, for example, the bureau in the country X, Y, Z? Do you have to try and really persuade your colleagues to bring someone on the air who's a random Joe, or are they very appreciative of this?
That is an excellent question, actually. One of the things we do when we vet and approve content is that we send it around to CNN, within CNN. So say, for example, the terrible events have happened in Boston Marathon. We had a bunch of content coming in from people. We would speak to those people, verify it, and then we would send it around to CNN, radio, television, different language, CNN Arabic, for example, and they would then be able to pitch and use the content themselves as well. They trust us, they know our team. We've worked very hard to work with our colleagues in different platforms, so they know the content that we have is quality, it's gone through the rigorous checks, and it's something they want to put on air. Priest, for example, Joe Kamaya, delightful gentleman from the Philippines, I work with Connect the World on a daily basis, and they know that if I give them somebody, they are going to give good television. I will have spoken to that person and made sure he's great on air. If I send them somebody who sits there looking terrified, down the lens of the camera, that's not going to work. He was lovely, he was engaging, they're going to appreciate that. So it's a process you constantly have to work with, but one of the nice things I found at the organisation is they are, from the get-go of a breaking news story, I have someone standing by my desk expectantly going, so, Boston, which is great, and that's something that we should continue and we should emphasise and kind of encourage in all our news organisations.
Hi, I seem to be continuing the tradition of questions coming from this small part of the room. But this is a question for Blair. You were talking about the use of forms to get information from people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to check, how does that kind of fit with data protection stuff? Because if you've got that information that's not on your site, it's on Google, I don't know, is there some kind of concern around that?
We think about it a bit. I mean, I feel like Google's platform is pretty secure. But that said, we let people know that we're using Google. We let them know that we're keeping the information confidential within our newsroom. You can also make certain questions required and make other questions optional. So that's another protection. But we also often will not ask for very, very sensitive information about household income, for example. I think it's important to remember that these forms are a jumping point, and you can collect a lot of information about your sources and what happened to them, but then we call them. We often contact the people who fill out these forms and learn more about their story, and so it's really the beginning of a verification process for us. So if you're particularly nervous about some kind of information, just inform them so that they know what they're giving to you. And then, if you're still nervous, you can call them back. One option is you can always download everything from Google Spreadsheets into an Excel and then wipe it clean. It's not something we've ever done, but it's an option. So you can then host those spreadsheets on your newsroom servers.
The two issues mainly with that is accessibility and security. And as long as there's only a certain number of people who have access to the contacts database or the forms, the results from the forms, and it's in a relatively secure place, then that's usually fine.
It's an interesting question when you have people who want to remain anonymous for security reasons as well. Then it becomes a case of, obviously it's not practicable to send that person's information around to an entire news organisation, so we host it somewhere confidentially, just to make sure that iReporter's information is held secure as well.
Hello, this is just a question to all the media outlets on the panel. All this user-generated content, are you paying for it, and do you find that people are happy to supply it for free?
Do you want to go first now?
No, we don't pay for it. And yes, people are happy to supply it. I personally, in my last role as social media and community secretary in Liverpool, I ran 2 newspapers that were 100% content direct or user-generated. And no, I was never asked for a payment. And everybody, rather than thinking, oh, you're taking my stuff and not paying me, people are so grateful for the opportunity to see their work on our platforms. And it is a partnership. And as I say, I've never had anybody not wanting to get involved in that I've spoken to or have asked me for payment.
It's the same with us. We don't pay for iReports, and we find, much as you say, we don't really need to. People post on our platform in an altruistic manner. That's the whole nature of the platform. To do that would be to destroy that altruism. And so it's very gratifying that people do take the time from the day to craft a really beautiful piece of work and send it to us, and we will vet it and approve it, and they in turn get that reciprocal feeling of value. So, no, we've not needed to.
I have a question for Sarah as well. You briefly mentioned opinion, that it's becoming bigger. If you could just tell a bit about that. And another question, how much data do you collect about the users and how sensitive they are about that?
Okay, opinion and data. Okay, opinion is an interesting one. We recently posted an assignment asking people for their personal essays because we just noticed that in the comments sections of stories, but also on iReport, people were often posting quite heartfelt personal responses to stories. One woman, for example, wrote an essay, Why Are Raising My Children Without God? The atheism versus religion debate is massive in America, and this piece got millions of views. And we felt we needed to harness this. So we're asking people for their personal experiences and their personal thoughts on key issues. And that seems to be doing very well for us. And so what we've been doing is looking at, is it something that we want to pull from iReport, maybe expand into a piece, or is the very nature that it's on iReport as a user-generated platform, is that making it what's so popular? And we're kind of seeing how that goes, but I think it's an avenue that increasingly we want to look at. People do want to share their stories long form, and if they do, then we don't want to deny them that opportunity. We certainly want to harness that. In terms of data, if a person's not comfortable with giving me data from iReport, then we just won't approve it, because it wouldn't be fair on them, and obviously we couldn't use it ourselves. And again, it does depend on the story. If we receive a piece of content from Syria, for example, we have a whole team in Atlanta dedicated towards looking at that. You know, when was it posted? What's the metadata? Is the shot, does it correlate with what Google Earth has in coordinates? Are they speaking the right dialect? You know, have we received similar? Is there similar stuff floating around on YouTube? We have to be very, very careful on that. In terms of personal data, for example, I recently spoke with a North Korea defector, who did not want the details of his escape to be known. And I said, absolutely fine. I will need to know them, but I will just keep them confidential in my own files and no one will see it. So it really kind of just depends, and sussing out what people are comfortable with sharing, but also we have a minimum that we have to achieve, and that's the balance that we kind of walk.
Last question.
Question primarily for Niko. How much do you know about your contributors? Do you know anything about their age, sex, educational background? Who are these people?
Well, we know their location at every time. I mean, they give us permission to track their location. They can also turn it off, but majority leaves it on. We ask voluntarily for name and phone number. About 82% of our scoop shooters have given that information. They can then log into the system either using a password and username or through their Facebook account. And majority now does it through Facebook, and then we have access to their Facebook profile, and that tells that majority now are men, and they're below 40 years old. So it's a young male crowd for the most part, but not entirely.
Okay, thank you. Right, I know you're all dying to go to lunch, and we've got 1 minute left, so I'm just going to do a very quick roundup. So I think we've had some very interesting stuff, a lot of information, a lot of good tweets out there which you can go back and look at. But I think the points that I've noted are, ask your network. And if you don't have a community, build it. And it's not a quick fix, and you've got to become part of the community, be active. And we are talking about verification here of sources, do we know the photographers, etc. But as a journalist running a community, you've got to provide social proof as well for people to give you that information and their contributions. Keep it fresh and of value to the community, and reward your contributors, whether that's being nice, saying thank you, or them getting the kick out of seeing their photos being published. And connect with them when and how where they feel comfortable, whether it's on social networks, email, photographs, go to where they are and use the communication lines that they feel comfortable with. Be organised and know what you want and ask for what you want and need, and think about the process of distribution, and go back and revisit these people, and don't use social media just to promote your publication, but use it to source good journalism. So enjoy lunch, and I hope you enjoyed the panel.
Just a quick note on lunch. Some food and drink will be served out to the right, so you don't have to necessarily